Hi everyone and welcome to part 3 of the polar bear drawing tutorial. In this part we're going to be focusing on drawing the right hand side of his face, and I will be sharing a few tips on how to achieve the wet looking fur we can see at the bottom of his face. I'm starting off with the Caran raw umber 10%. And I'm just using this to blend the details around the nose a tiny bit more. Now I'm going to start mapping out the fur pattern above the nose and around the right eye, and for this I'm using the Faber Castell Cold Grey No. 4 pencil, and I'm using really light small marks to fill in the pattern that I can see. For the area above the nose, I'm using a lot of upward strokes that are quite small. And towards the edges of either side of the nose, the fur pattern starts to move downwards, so I'm making sure to use the cold grey to fill those details in first. Now I'm using the Faber Castell Sky Blue pencil, and I'm using this to create a nice light layer of blue where I can see the fur is a cool tone. So between the two eyes is looking really blue. And I'm using a light pressure and going in the direction of the fur pattern at all times. Now I'm using the Faber Castell Warm Grey No. 4 pencil, and I'm using this to add in those darker details we can see in the photo. Around the eye has quite a few darker details, so I'm using this pencil to add them in now. I'm going to use the Caran olive brown 10% pencil now, just to add in a little bit of yellow to the sides of the nose. Now I'm using the Faber Castell Cold Grey number 3 to just start building up a darker layer around the top of his nose here. There's a lot of cool tones in this area, so I'm going to be sticking with using the cold grey colours. Now I'm using the Caran white pencil to start blending out the layer of pencil we've just put down on the nose, and I'm also using it to create these white lines of fur that go into the shadow on the left here. Using the Faber Castell Warm Grey number 4 pencil, I'm going back in and adding the darker details. Using the olive brown pencil again, I'm going back in and just adding slightly more of a yellow tone to some patches of the fur, so in the centre of the nose and also above the two eyes. Now I'm using the Faber Castell Earth Green pencil to add in the few green tones that I can see in the fur. And you can see that I'm always drawing in the direction of the fur, regardless of the colour pencil that I'm using. I want to start darkening up the fur in this section, so I'm using the Caran Payne's Grey 30% pencil, and I'm going in over the lines we've already done, and I'm selecting to make a few of them a bit darker, and this pencil will add just a nice blue tone to this section of fur. I'm just going to do a little bit of blending again with the white Caran pencil, and this makes sure that we still are getting the difference between the light areas of fur and the dark ones, and they're not just all blending together. And I'm going back in with the Faber Castell Sky Blue pencil, just to make sure that this section of fur really has that blue tone to it, and that we're building that up as we go along. And I want to add a little more yellow tone to this area of the fur, so I'm using the Caran Naples Ochre pencil. Now I'll use the Faber Castell Warm Grey pencil in number 4 again. and this is just to add in a few more darker lines throughout the fur. Right, so I'm happy with how the fur between his eyes is looking now. I'm going to move on and start drawing the fur to the right hand side of his eye and his right ear. So I'm using the warm grey No. 2 Faber Castell pencil, and I'm just going to quickly rub out the graphite pencil lines I've sketched in first, and then I'll go back in and draw them with the Faber Castell pencil. Again, I'm just using this pencil to capture the pattern of fur, and I'm mainly drawing in the darker parts with this, and then we'll go back in and make them much darker during the layering process. also going to start drawing in the fur pattern you see below his nose and mouth. And this is going to be a bit more difficult because it's wet fur, so you can see it sort of comes together into little triangle clumps. So I'm just using the warm grey pencil to start off with, and I'm just starting to draw in where these little triangles are, and then we'll go in and layer them up so they look much more realistic. Now I feel happy with how this next section of fur is looking, and I think I've sketched out all the details I need. I'm going to start using some other colours of pencil now, and I'm starting off with the Caran Payne's Grey 30%, and I'm starting with the ear as this looks quite blue to me. Now I'll use the Faber Castell Warm Grey number 4, and I'll use this to start building up that darker part of the ear. And now with the Caran Olive Brown 10% pencil, I'll start building up the yellow tones to the fur in this section. And I just want a slightly brighter yellow colour, as the olive brown is quite muted, so I'm going to use the Caran Naples Ochre just to do this tiny part of the ear, which is looking really yellow in the reference photo. Now I'm using the light cobalt blue Caran pencil, and I'm picking out all the blue tones I can see in the fur and adding just a light layer of this colour for this section. Next, I'm using the Faber Castell Beige red pencil, and I'm looking at the reference photo to see where there are a few areas of pinker looking fur, and I'm using this pencil to start building up that colour. Now I've got the Faber Castell Earth Green pencil again, and I'm using this again just to fill in where the green tones are coming through in the fur. I'm not just using this pencil to shade in a light layer of green, I'm also adding a few fine, darker lines in the fur, as you can see. Now I'm also using the green to start darkening up the wet fur towards the bottom of his face. And I'm just going over the triangles that we drew in earlier and making them look a little darker and blending them out a little bit as well. And the shadow below all of this fur is looking quite green, so I'm going to start drawing that in with this pencil, and we'll obviously go in and make it much darker, but this just gives a nice green undertone to start with. And I'm just going to use this pencil to sketch out a few more lines to map out where the wet fur lies. Now I've got the Caran Raw Umber 10% pencil again, and I'm using this to start blending out the layer of pencil we've just put down. Now you do have to pay a little more attention to the direction of the fur in the section that's wet, as with each little triangle of fur it does tend to fall in a different direction. And I'm not filling all of this section in with the raw umber pencil. I'm making sure to still leave a few patches white, mainly towards the tips of the triangle, as you can see. I'm going to start building up the yellow tone now, and I'm using the olive brown 10% Caran pencil. And I'm going back into the sections I've blended with the raw umber pencil, and I'm just adding a bit more of this yellow tone to some parts. Now I'm starting to build up the shadow, and I'm using the Faber Castell Sky Blue pencil. And now I want to go into the wet fur and just add a darker layer of pencil so I can clearly see where I'm drawing and where the fur falls. So I'm using the Faber Castell Warm Grey No. 4 pencil, and I'm using a bit more pressure now because we've got a few layers of pencil down already. And I'm just darkening up the triangles that we've drawn in before and darkening up the shadow towards the bottom as well. But again, I'm not putting in any layer of solid colour. I'm using little lines and building up gradually. Now you can really see that the wet fur is starting to form, and I'm going to go in with the light cobalt blue pencil again, and I'm just going to add a slight blue tint to the tips of each triangle. And I just want to add in a little more green, as the reference photo is looking a bit greener to me than what I currently have. So I'm going back in with the earth green pencil, and I'm mainly focusing on adding it to the areas that already have the warm grey darker colour down, and I'm just slightly blending that out into the rest of the fur. And using the Caran green ochre pencil, I'm going to start adding a little more colour into this part of the fur. I'm adding a bit of a pink tone to this area of the fur using the Faber Castell Beige Red. And I'm using the Caran white pencil again, just to pick out a few highlights I can see in this section. So that's the end of part 3. I hope you've enjoyed drawing today with me. And if you have any questions, just pop a comment below. And make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on part 4 and all the other parts. As always, thank you for watching and supporting my drawing.